Hey everyone, Chrissy Tobis here for Kindred Stamps, and today I'm going to show you how to use a stencil in a different way that maybe you're not familiar with. So, of course, we use stencils for putting patterns onto paper and different media by using ink and different pastes and stuff, but today I'm going to show you that you can actually use them to emboss. So I have a thin piece of stock here. This is actually a flock transfer sheet, so it's nice and fuzzy, and when you put the stencil in your die cutting machine, and I just put the paper down with the stencil and ran it through with the two plates with no problem. It went and embossed it for me. And so now I'm doing it with cardstock. Now the only difference this time is I'm adding 2 additional pieces of scrap cardstock just to give it a little bit more pressure to make sure that it gets into that cardstock. It's a little bit thicker. So go ahead and play with your embossing machine, or your die cutting machine, I should say. You may not even need those extra pieces of cardstock depending upon what kind that you're using. I'm using a Spellbinders, and that one seems to be pretty standard. I know I had like an old Cuttlebug, and I know that a lot of the stuff I did with that seems to be pretty similar with my Spellbinders. So you might just be able to put your piece of cardstock or flock down and put the stencil in with it and go. So then the other fun thing is that I really kind of wanted to make and it ends up debossing instead of embossing. I really wanted to make that kind of show. So I added just a little bit of ink to it. I sped that up and made it really fast. So then it really kind of popped in certain areas. So I'm going to use a really cute little stinker stamp. He's this adorable little skunk. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp him 2 different times. I didn't really care too much about positioning, but I did stamp him on watercolor cardstock. So that is why I'm using my stamping tool, because I want to make sure that I get a nice clean impression. So I stamped a couple times. Then I just off camera, I heat embossed it with some clear embossing powder because I knew that I was going to use some watercolor markers. So these are Spectrum Aqua markers, and you can see I just kind of scribble down the color. I'm using a glass mat, but if you don't have a glass mat, that's okay. You don't need one. You can use anything shiny. So if you have an extra piece of acrylic from like the back of a stamp set, or you have a laminated sheet, or even an acrylic block that you'd use for stamping, that's going to work too. So you just go ahead and scribble the colors down that you want. And I'm using a water brush. So you can see I just kind of pick up the color and blend it in. I'm doing both of them at the same time to make it nice and easy. Also, if you don't have a water brush, that's okay too. You can use a regular paintbrush along and dip it in some water. And the way that I do this too is you can see I do tap that paper towel. I know it's going really fast, but I do tap that paper towel several times. That's just to get the excess water, excess color off. So if you've never used watercolor markers or really watercolors before, I will say I personally think it is one of the easiest ways to color things in, but it does take a little bit of practice, like with anything. So don't get frustrated, and it's also the most forgiving. So I think that even if you make a mistake, it's easy to fix, because really, if you kind of screw up, you can just add a little bit more water and blend out your mistake. So I just add a light color, and then I come in several times with that same color or a darker color, and I just keep layering on top, on top, on top, as you can see in here. And sometimes I hit it with a heat gun. Sometimes it dries enough on its own that I don't have to. But to achieve a really, really nice watercolor look, it does take a little bit of time because you have to add colors on top of colors so many times. Then I just fussy cut it out using some scissors. If you have a scan and cut, you could definitely do that. I just wanted to fussy cut. And now I'm just going to go and assemble my card. So I'm doing 2 different ones here. The one with the flock, which is nice and fuzzy and pretty. It's super fun. I thought it was so much fun to do like the roses. That is the stained glass roses stencil, by the way. I just thought it was really cute to have the roses with the little skunk on there. And then I die cut that little bubble. That was a die that I just had on hand. If you don't have that, you can cut it out by hand, or you could even just do it like on a scrap piece of paper and just have like a rectangle or anything like that. You don't have to have a speech bubble. Now, for this, I'm using liquid adhesive just because it's the flock. So if I use non-liquid adhesive, it'll pull off, because that is actually what the flock does. It kind of pulls off that to make it fuzzy onto whatever adhesive you're using. So here are both cards. I'm going to give you a close-up and another shot of both. So I hope that you give the debossing with the stencil a try. Have a great day.